Welcome back to another episode of Emotional Nightmares. My name is Tyler.
I'm Nicole.
And on today's episode, we have another guest with us. His name is Dave. So with that, we are going to allow Dave to introduce himself. So Dave, go ahead, introduce yourself.
I'm an addict named Dave. That's just how I identify myself. I used to look at that as a curse, and today it's a blessing for me, like actually being able to identify as what I am and live my authentic, like genuine life. I like to think I'm different than everybody else and that I haven't had that bad of a life. And my perspective on that has completely changed over the last 4 years. I'll have 4 years here in a couple days.
It's awesome.
Free of drugs and alcohol. But it's funny the way your perspective changes on things like that. Like many things that I thought I knew and had figured out over the course of my life has all been turned upside down for the better. Kind of went, like we were talking about, from that dark place of not knowing whether I want to go on and keep living, not knowing what to do if I choose to keep living. It's one of those difficult things, I think. Anybody that's dealt with mental health problems or substance abuse has probably at one point or another over their journey kind of dealt with that idea. Before I used to look at suicidal thoughts as like just the act of like, tying a noose, or will I jump off a building, or what will I do? And I look at that way different today, whereas like there'd be days I'd wake up and imagine what would a world be like without me in it. Something very passive and not like the actual act of doing it. That before I would have never identified that as like a suicidal thought. So that's something that's changed a lot. As far as having an open mind and being able to actually listen to people. Like I always like the saying, like, listen to understand, not to react. That's something I've been trying to work on, is actively listening to people and hearing them. Because now, again, with like a little time under my belt, I like to be able to help people in the places where I kind of fell short.
It caught me last time, the same noise, and I jumped, and I was like, oh my God, and then I heard it again, and I did the exact same thing, sorry.
But, yeah. He's just going to smile and laugh.
Yeah, and he won't edit it.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. Like,
It's probably Pickles trying to get in.
Yeah, I mean, it's my cat.
What are you going to do about that, right?
Yeah, like, I'm used to it, so it is what it is.
It scares me every time.
Yeah. All right, man. So tell us, right, or tell the people listening. So tell us your turning point, right? Because obviously you're getting high, life's getting shitty. You're going through these issues, these trauma issues, these mental health issues. You're using drugs as a way to cope. What was the turning point that was like, man, something's got to be different? So a couple of things, really. I had come to terms, like we were talking about acceptance earlier when I first got here. I remember being in the bar, basically, and someone saying, like, why do you drink so much? Like, what is your problem? And I didn't have an answer, but, excuse me, I came to the terms with, like, well, I'm an alcoholic, man, that's what we do. Like, this is what I'm supposed to do, right? Like, I just kind of...
On the right path.
You accepted
that. I mean, it's not the same type of acceptance we talk about in recovery, but right. I kind of just was like, this is the role this is the hand I'm dealt, this is the role I'm supposed to play, so I'll play it to the best of my ability. Balls to the wall, like with everything. But right, probably, I don't know, 4 or 6 months before I actually ended up in rehab, I remember having a conversation with my mom about, and this is such a weird, dark place to be in, but I said, you're probably going to have to bury me and raise my son. And that's not like a proud conversation you have.
Right.
But it was one of those things of like, I had given up to a point, but I didn't know where to go from there. And I didn't have the balls to actually like go through with killing myself. I would talk about it, think about it. Like at the end, I was beaten up, man, like ready to give up. But my last run was the wildest 3 years of my life, and basically ended up in legal trouble, on house arrest, and then the biggest part of my story, man, is COVID. Like, I know that's really weird. Everyone says 2020 was a dumpster fire. Like, 2020 saved my life and gave me my life back. When they shut the county down, that was my free pass. Like, I had one of those drug patches on my arm. They said, take that off. We don't know when we're going to see you again. And that, I heard that, but what I really heard was, hey, you can get high again and no one's going to know. Like, that was how I justified it.
I think that's what a lot of people did.
Yeah, I mean, and it was, there again, that was, gosh, I don't know, probably 3 months that I went right back into it, like hard. And when I ended up seeing my probation officer again, of course I got the jail or rehab. What are we doing? I didn't want to go back to jail. Twice was enough for me. So I guess you could say I was kind of forced into it. But there again, I was at that point willing to try whatever to try and figure out something different, because I knew what I had going on wasn't working. There was no beating around the bush with that. Like, it was not working, and I was going to either end up dead or in prison at some point.
And you were just really trying to self-medicate the suicidal ideations that you're having a lot of the time?
For the most part, that's where I had gotten to. Like, it wasn't that negative the whole way through, right? Like, it got to a point where I think out of the desperation, like, just trying to figure something else out, like, that's where my brain was at. So it was easier to just numb myself and not have to deal with those thoughts or emotions that I really didn't want to.
Yeah.
So
the alcohol receptors are the same as the benzodiazepine receptors. So people who get addicted to things like alcohol are so much more susceptible to getting addicted to things like Xanax or Ativan or Klonopin and things like that, because it's the same brain receptors. And it really does calm your nervous system. I mean, alcohol is only a solution periodically, but it was a periodic table joke.
That's where
You're welcome.
I can appreciate that.
But so that, usually people who deal with like you're welcome, high levels of stress and anxiety will go towards alcohol, and then they'll find such relief in it that it gets trapping, and that's what causes the compulsion.
Yeah.
And I think that's
Self-rewarding.
there again. So what, like, benzos and alcohol are the only two that you can actually die from withdrawals, right? Those are the two.
Yeah, you can
ones
die
that
from them too.
Yeah.
But so for me, like, I hate the drug of choice question all the time. Like, I always
Me
just say,
too.
my drug of choice was more, man. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter if it's drugs,
Anything.
alcohol, women, gambling, video games, whatever. If
Right.
you give it to me, I'm gonna find a way to, like, go.
Well, I
too
hate that
far.
question, because when you say to me, Tyler, what's your drug of choice? It makes me disassociate, right? Like, when I got sober, I remember in rehab, I would look at people, and I always tell people now when they say Tyler, I always say, like, my name's Tyler, I'm a junkie, right? And I refer to myself that way because it's a reminder for me, right? I've turned it into a positive, because for me, I never use needles, right? I never smoke crack.
Same.
Right?
The needle thing made me different from
Yeah, so I would sit in rehab and be like, oh, you're a junkie because you use needles. I can't relate to you. I'm different.
It made me feel more
And-
sophisticated.
Well, yeah, it did, right? Because I would look at crackheads. I'd be like, well, you're smoking crack. I just snort the shit. So, like, you got a problem, bro. And I'd be like, you're dirty, right?
It's so funny because
We're living the same way.
We draw those lines, and they're just like borders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We make this imaginary line of, like, because I had a guy one time tell me, like, oh, you don't seem like a smoker. You should just snort it. Like one's better than the other. What's the difference?
So
I mean, like,
that's the crazy thing, right?
Yeah.
So, like, I always tell people, like, for me, I'm a junkie, right? Because I will use any drug, right? Like, I may not have been shooting up and I may not have been smoking crack, but I was smoking meth, right?
Yeah.
And I was snorting these drugs, and I drank like it was nobody's business, right? Because me and alcohol go way back. That's my first love. And like, I have to remind myself. So for me, I hate that question. Like, especially working in rehab, they'll be like, well, my drug of choice is cocaine. And then it does this weird shit, right? Where you'll see people say, well, I've been sober now for 20 years. And I'm like,
I know what I'm doing.
I'm like, well, then why are you here?
Right.
Well, I've been sober from cocaine. I'm just, for the past like 6 months, I've been doing heroin. I'm like, no, bro, you've been substituting one for another. Like, let's not get this twisted.
Behavior is a compulsive
So
behavior.
I'm with you. I hate
And
that
that's the
fucking
thing,
question.
too, is like, I don't say it to like discredit anyone. Like, if you're proud of yourself for an accomplishment like that, cool. But
Sure.
like,
Absolutely.
that's not something where, that's like saying like what you were just talking about. Like, oh, I don't smoke meth anymore. I just smoke crack.
Right.
How is that?
That's why I
It's
have
those
to say I'm a junkie.
differentiations that we
Mhm.
make to try and like make ourselves unique from the crowd.
Mhm.
And I think that's something too with like people in recovery. Like,
That's how
where-
sick I am. When I first got sober, I used to say that. I'd be like, my name's Tyler. I'm a unique addict.
Yeah.
Because I believe that shit.
Well, and it's so funny that you just said that, because I've been thinking about labels lately. Like, I heard a
They
news article
suck.
the other day. It was like, the first, I don't know, over 40 African Americans, such and such of the baseball that played on left field. Like, he put so many things in front of it. It's like, who cares? A dude hit millions of home runs and he's cool for it. Like, why does his skin color or religion or
Mhm.
sexual preference or whatever, like, that's something I think today, like in today's society, like with how many hot button issues we're dealing with that get politicized and like overly
Yeah.
in the spotlight, it
Well,
it
if
creates
you're,
such disunity between everybody.
that's kind of the point. I think honestly, I think it's just, and I'll go into conspiracy theories from here. But I think it's
Yes,
just,
always
I think it's just like the actual being of propaganda and confirmation bias, where if they can get you, if you're confused, or if you're concentrated on something else, then you are not looking for important things.
Mm-hmm.
Like
And you're not
misdirection.
educating yourself, and you're fighting with your neighbor over their goddamn flag, okay?
Yeah.
So,
Well, we talk about this on many episodes.
Yeah.
Where we talk about, like, the use of labels. Everybody wants to put a label on everything. Like, look at the mental health field.
yeah.
Right? Like, we want to say, okay, well, this person is, got depression, or this person is, they're bipolar, or this person is this and this and this. And I think a lot of people do it too, because labels are a way to be able to say, oh, that's the problem. And it's like, you can label me as whatever. The problem is me.
Right.
Like, the
That's-
problem is deep down, like, it's me. And for me, like, I'm with you. I hate labels. I hate that shit. I know, like, that's why, like, I've taken the term junkie and been like, yeah, I'm a junkie, right? Really, I'm one of the other ones is this whole nightmare shit that we got going on here, right? Because, like, growing up, we were considered the nightmare kids.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because
Right.
we were the nightmare kids, because we were latchkey kids. Like, parents weren't home, doors are unlocked, you got the key, you're a latchkey kid. These are the nightmare children. Their parents aren't taking care of them, and it's like,
It's like when people call themselves the black sheep, right?
right.
Like, if you get enough
Right.
black sheep of the families together, like, that's a whole family.
Your whole
of black
family
sheep,
are black
you
sheep.
know?
Right. Well,
My step family's really cute. Like, my grandma, she's at her mid-80s, and she'll be like, oh, this is my granddaughter Nicole. Don't mind her. She has blue hair and tattoos, and she's just a little bit of a black sheep. I'm like, Grandma, I love you so much. Like, okay, that might be a little different.
Right.
But
well, and I think too, like, it comes into a point where also too, labels can make you become negative about yourself, right? Like you had just mentioned, like we were talking before this, we won't go into detail because I don't want to put anybody on blast. It'll hurt their feelings. But like when somebody the people that just think they're fucking out of control, right? That are like, oh, I'm here now, like some shit's about to go down, and I'm
I
like,
hate that.
but why? Like, why do you want to be that? Like, what
Well,
is
they're
wrong
calling
with
me in
you?
for reinforcement. No
Yeah,
one's
I'm
calling
like,
you for reinforcement, you weirdo.
To me, that's put offing. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, you're somewhere I don't want to be.
Yeah.
Good luck in
And
life.
that's where I think being in recovery if you're doing recovery for the right reasons, like I like to think I am. I'm not saying I'm perfect by any means. Like I'm a human. I still fuck
Sure,
up, right?
we all are.
But like I think if you, in my beliefs, everyone knows right from wrong.
Mm-hmm.
There's a right way and a wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, there's some gray areas sometimes, but like if I wholeheartedly believe something's the right thing to do and I do it and I find out after the fact that like maybe that could have been handled differently, right? I always say I like to deal with situations the best I can with the information I have at hand.
Yeah.
Sure.
And,
That's all you
that
can do, man.
information is subject to change, right?
Correct.
If we're doing recovery right, we're constantly learning and trying to be a better version.
Mm-hmm.
And so like that's something where, especially with like cancel culture, I'm sure you love that.
No,
That's
I'm
one
waiting.
of his favorite topics.
I'm waiting for them to get us.
But you know what I mean? Like, just because I said something in 1995 doesn't
Yeah.
mean that today in 2024.
Oh, I said some
that-
really interesting things. I think if people really like looked at, I mean,
like,
like, but
dug
like,
deeper.
honestly, but like, what's it matter? You know, I think the point, like, I didn't really, when I first entered school, I come from an upper middle class neighborhood. I'm well aware that I do. I don't try to hide that. Because of those reasons, I didn't have to suffer as much. My parents had some issues that made my life not great, but like their financial status was not one of them, thankfully, you know? And so I'm well aware that I did not suffer like other people did. But I literally, I think I was 22 years old before I realized what healthcare disparities were. Like I was like just lived close to the hospital. Like my brain was not, it was not understanding, you know. So now that I'm older and I get it.
But that goes the other way too, where you were interpreting and understanding based on what.
Yeah, but I've
information you
said
had,
some
right?
crazy ass shit because of the things that I thought that I knew, and then the people that I surrounded myself that just kept confirming the things that.
Yeah.
Without then building.
That's
on
why.
it.
So to this point, so we'll just dive into this topic because I know that's one of the things we wanted to talk about. Why not? This past, like I've been saying for a while now, like this past year of my life has been the strongest growth period of my life, right? Because I'm so stressed, right? Not only am I like, and the reason I'm stressed out is because I'm constantly, almost every day, having to challenge the way that I've always thought and challenge my beliefs because the people that I've surrounded myself with are not co-signing my shit. They're not the same kind of people that I'm used to. And like they challenge, like, yeah, why do you think that? And there's been times like I've said shit and they're like, bro, that's a dog shit take. And I'm like, what? Like, what you mean? Like,
there was one time that you're like,
you
you're
know?
really offending me. I'm like, for what? Like,
yeah. Like,
I don't even remember what that conversation was about.
either.
Exactly, yeah.
But like, you have to look at those things. So like, I think recovery for me, right? God, like, I don't think so I don't want to say there's a right way or a wrong way, right?
We talked about that earlier.
But there is, right? And the wrong way is like, if I just put drugs and alcohol down and I don't do anything else, that's wrong. All I'm doing is becoming the dry drunk, and you might as well go get high.
I just met a guy yesterday, and I think part of that, what you just said, the capacity to be aware of that fact.
Yeah.
That like, cause I had, when I got in, so from the time I could drive, man, I was driving drunk or on something, whatever.
Yeah.
So once you get away with that so many times, I know it's against the law and it's illegal, but it became normal for me, right?
Yeah, you
Like,
normalize the behavior.
It was a normalized behavior where I have 3 DUIs on my record. So the second one, after that, I took the drug court and everything, and I had almost 7 years of clean time put together, but I was doing just what you were talking about. Like, I didn't have recovery. I didn't change the behaviors or the scumbag stuff that was associated with it.
You're just a scumbag with no drugs and alcohol.
Yeah, I just
A scumbag with no excuse.
The system's like, oh,
scumbag.
they got their third DUI, why haven't they learned? And it's like, okay, so when you started baseball, did you not get hit a few times and then love baseball? When you started swimming, did you not think you were going to drown a few times and then start swimming? So when you get DUIs, it's not like, oh, better learn my lesson. It's like, well, better take some different streets. Better try to drink this instead of that. Better, you know? And so, like, people... You know,
I mean, how many times did you say...
People don't get it.
How many times... Like, I know I've talked to a guy, I mean, people with crazy DUIs. I've never had them, but I should have, right?
Right.
But like I know people that will be like, "Wow, the problem is I took the main street,"
Yeah.
and I'm like, "No, bro, the problem is just you were fucking intoxicated while you were driving." No,
It
I
was
never
the
would have
dirty
happened if I
wall.
wanted to, fucking
the
tail light
checkpoint.
was out. If I would have been paying attention, no, bro. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
That's when so in recovery, I've been pulled over twice
Mm-hmm.
since I got clean. And the first time was I had just picked up 18 months. I was actually leaving my home group, and my girlfriend at the time was driving down the road in front of me. So, of course, I'm kind of being an asshole a little bit, like driving a little fast, whatever. So this cop catches up to me, and, like, I already know. Like, this is one of the things that, like, some things from our past, we aren't going to get past it, right? So immediately, if I get pulled over and they see my record, there's nothing violent on there.
Right.
But there's, like, paraphernalia, possession, 3 DUIs, careless driving, all this stuff. So immediately, before they even step out of the car and they run my plate, they think I'm fucked up, period. For the rest of my life. That's never going to change.
Right.
That's not coming off my record anytime, and I'm not willing
Plus,
to put
I
in the
look like
work
this,
to
and
try
it's
and do
a
that.
problem. Yeah.
And that's the other thing, too, yeah. Like, so, put my windows down because my car has tinted windows. So I put my windows down. It's like 30 degrees out, and they're sitting here, like, telling me, oh, this isn't really our thing. Well, why don't you call me tomorrow and see if you can give me some information? Like, basically trying to get me to snitch, right? I'm like, bro, anyone I know is dead or in prison. Like, yeah, I'm not going to help you out with shit. Like, anybody I tell you, you already got them or they're dead. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's
Right.
one of those just weird, like, transactional interactions where I'm like, what are we really doing here? And it's
Honest.
funny because the next day, I worked for a shift. I waited. This dude's a night shift guy. Like, he was on night shift. I waited till like 10 or 11 o'clock because, like, that's how I live today. If I tell you I'm going to do something, like I told you earlier, I really wasn't planning on coming here today, but you asked me. We've been talking about it for a while, and here I am. Like, I try and do what I say I'm going to do today. So I stayed up till 11 o'clock that night, called this dude, left him a voicemail, never heard anything, ever. Fun fact, that was the night the state troopers got in a shootout and had, like, shot somebody. They were trying to serve a warrant. So when I was pulled over, he's
In
like, well,
Crawford
this
County?
yeah, he's like, this wasn't really our thing anyways. We have something we're on our way to. It was the day after Christmas, actually. It was, probably, 2 or 3 years ago, the day after Christmas.
Well, why even pull you over?
So,
Yeah,
well,
that's
here's the thing. He's like, you were doing 85, and I was like, I know I wasn't doing the speed limit. He's like, well, we were doing 85 to catch up with you. Well, that doesn't mean I was doing 85.
Right.
That is true.
It was
That
such
is
a weird-
not how
So,
physics
like,
work, is it?
No, it was
Yeah.
just such a weird conversation. The whole
Yeah.
interaction was like one
They
of
get
those.
weirder and weirder the longer you stay sober. Yeah.
That
Don't get more
lots of
tattoos. They
stuff.
still rip you out the car.
That I've been doing that. My legs are getting ridiculous.
Yeah, I got ripped out of the car the other day. By the
I heard
place.
this
I
story.
keep
Wasn't
my
it?
hospital ID badge hanging on my rearview mirror,
I'll put
and that has
cards-
gotten me a lot of. And then they'll look at me and they'll be like, "I'm like, hey man, I had a bad day at work. We did some restraints. Most
Like-
likely, it was not cool. I'm trying to go home. Sorry if I went over the speed
Like
limit.
back in the day when you try and get one of
Twice
those
it's gotten me
FOP
out of a speeding
things.
ticket.
Yeah, because again.
Shut my mouth.
Yeah, I mean, again,
Not
So
anymore.
sorry.
Nicole, we live in an
Mr.
area.
State Trooper.
We live in an area where, like I said, in many episodes,
They're coming for me
unfortunately,
right now. Do you hear them?
unfortunately, the area we live
That
in,
was quick.
They caught me.
who you are, it's not what you do, right?
It's true.
Because in this area, they really go by that. Like when I was ripped out of the car, if I would have had a business card on me that had my credentials on it, I was, because he asked for that.
Yeah.
I would have been fine, right?
Right.
But I
Which is
didn't have
such a
one.
Weird, like, if you think
Weird
about
thing to
that.
ask about,
Right.
Legitimately.
right?
If
And
I
like
have some letters after my name, you're just gonna let me get, like,
weird thing, weird to even say.
Yeah.
right?
Well, give me one of your business cards because like I want to see it. Like
I look
why?
homeless 100%
You
of
know?
the time. No one is
Yeah.
going to know that I am a G at being a mental health professional. Like,
Right.
they're just going to
But
think that I
see,
might be living in a shelter.
And that's the whole. There again, like, I have certain, like, hot button things that I get on these tangents of, like, ideas, and, like, stigma is one of them that I've been dealing with
Yeah.
lately. Of, like, there again, back to alcohol, man. Like, alcohol, I think, for me, that's the hardest one to kick, really, because you go pay for your gas or something, it's sitting right there
agree.
in these little mini pocket-sized fucking
Mhm.
bottles
Yeah.
right in your face all the time, and that's socially acceptable, right?
Right.
Mhm.
Like, that's something that, like, You go do that when you're golfing
Yeah.
with your buddies or whatever dumb shit that people justify it with.
Right.
And like for me, I'm almost, like I said, my whole perspective on my addiction changed because like I used to say like, God, why me? Why am I the addict? Why did I get dealt this hand?
Mm-hmm.
And now looking back, like if I hadn't gone through that, I definitely damn sure wouldn't be sitting here with you guys, right?
Yeah.
But I'm fortunate that I was able to stop acting like a scumbag and figure out what road to go down and like what my purpose is, I guess.
Mhm.
Because like if I hadn't found something, I enjoy helping people. I've always
Yeah.
been like a people pleaser, like a fixer. And again, that was something early on, like people pleasing. Like I always looked at that as like doing nice things for you to make you all happy, right? I never looked at that as like keeping in my own thoughts and ideas because I was afraid of being rejected or told I was dumb or whatever the case may be. Like that's a
Mhm.
form of people pleasing in my eyes too.
Yeah.
because
Absolutely.
It's something where I'm not able to be who I want to be and say what I want to say and be
But
comfortable about it, right?
Where are all the pleased people?
I
They
loved
don't
it when you
exist.
said that. I think I actually wrote
It's
that
a TikTok
comment.
thing. It was that you? It's somebody else's
Yeah.
TikTok. She's hilarious, but like,
Like, all these
damn,
people pleasers,
where
all
are
these
they?
pleased people.
Where are the pleased people? That is so true. I just find
That was so great.
more
when I
people
heard you say that.
unpleased.
Right?
Yeah.
That's what the one guy I know, we have a very funny story. Like when I first went back to Crawford County after being in treatment, I asked him to be my sponsor and he said no. So of course I go home like tail between my legs,
Love
like
that.
why am I not good enough? Why am I not good enough for him? You know, like it was all a me problem. It wasn't nothing to do with me. He had however many sponsees and like just knew his limits, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Today he's one of my best friends. We talk at least 2 or 3 times a week on the phone, not texting bullshit. I hate texting, man. That's the easiest way to like get misunderstood or get into an argument that didn't
It
have
does
can't-
get
there's no-
misinterpreted.
to be. You know, there's no inflection, no way to tell exactly how someone's saying something when it's typed in words. But
Mhm.
he always says like, you go up to Walmart and walk around and look how miserable the people's faces are.
Oh my gosh,
Like,
it's real.
I feel like some people put more energy into trying to look pissed off or miserable. That like,
Mhm.
Could be.
honestly, they probably look at me and think I'm crazy because I'll be walking through Walmart and get a weird thought and just start like giggling or laughing out loud, and I'm by myself. They probably think I have voices or something.
Well, I think there's just that many miserable people,
Yeah.
right? Like,
They are.
Yeah.
there's a lot of people that are stuck in an addiction mindset that they're so miserable, and like you had just mentioned about alcohol being the hardest thing. Unfortunately, alcohol is also the hardest thing for people to realize they have a problem,
Yeah.
right? Because this seems to be a crazy topic this week, where people keep saying this, and I keep saying to people, like, let me tell you, if you ever have to worry about controlled drinking, welcome to the club.
Yeah.
Because you're an alcoholic. Normal people don't worry about controlled drinking, right? Normal people aren't saying, well, I can only drink this many days out of the week. Like,
And you're
that's
talking
not
about
real.
like just the act
Yeah.
of like planning it out.
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
'Cause, like there
And,
again, the
like-
same goes for drugs too. Like,
Goes
Oh
the
my
same for
gosh.
drugs,
How
but
many
I remember
times-
calling
it's
my
easier-
boyfriend like at 4 you're
but
gonna
it's
do
easier
this,
for
and
us
at
to
6
see
you're gonna
that,
do that.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
Drugs are easier for you to see that you have
I
a problem
used
because of
to-
drugs. It's the alcohol, though, because like you had said, it's
You
so
don't feel
socially
so
acceptable.
grimy.
And
Right.
yeah, and at the store, it's at the stores everywhere, and you know, and
Not
like
running
You're having a bad
Trap
day,
house
people
for a
say,
fifth.
go get a
you
drink.
get the problem drinker, right?
Yeah.
I'm having I'm so stressed out, and the only way I can deal with my stress, I'm just gonna go to the bar and have a few
Yeah.
drinks, or like this, that, and the third.
Come
and
over
like
here, have wine.
I always say to people too, like, all this bad shit that's going on in your life, is it because you're drinking? Like, if you took away the drinking, would any of that bad shit have occurred?
I feel like that's
right?
the hardest step too, is like to have the courage to admit that, right? Because
To even look at it, right? Because people don't even want to look at that,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
People don't even want to be like, well, maybe, right? Because I get that a lot. People will be like, well, maybe, but, you know, all these problems. And I'm like, well, that's the idea of the problem drinker,
Yeah.
is that your problems never seem to fucking go away
Yeah.
because you just keep drinking,
Well, since
causing the problems.
You're burning your anxiety receptors because it's the
Yeah.
same type of, and then you actually just grow more anxious and more anxious and more anxious.
Yeah.
And then with high levels of anxiety, then you get stress-induced paranoia, stress-induced psychosis. You can start to have body dysmorphia issues just from the amount of stress and cortisol levels that are in your body. And then you can start injuring your organs from the
Yeah.
amount of cortisol in your body.
I always joke around about like the Just Say No campaign when we were younger.
It was literally the
Old
worst thing
Nancy
for this country.
Reagan.
Like how lazy of a campaign that is. Like they told me just say no.
She needed a project.
Right.
She
Yeah.
needed a
Say,
project.
hey, we're gonna rewire your brain with all these substances, and you're never gonna be the
Man,
same again. Like
they
that would have
had-
been a lot more helpful.
They had all the slogans, you know?
Yeah.
She
The,
did.
the scrambled eggs. the
Crack
fried
is
eggs.
whack. Just say no.
Crack is whack.
From the slogan era.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they pushed a milk campaign. Conspiracy theory.
Oh, stop it.
Sorry, I keep taking
Dairy
it back
is
there.
more addictive than anything, and dairy
It
and
is, man,
gluten
'cause-
turn into sugar in your body, and then you become sugar deficient, and then you end up with diabetes. Diabetes is long-term addictive to food. I don't care what anybody
See,
says.
Sure,
that's
it does.
What it is.
And so much so that I was just sitting here. Like,
They'll lose their toes.
Yeah,
And you're like, bro,
and still
that's from
go.
the cupcakes. And they're like,
Yeah.
nah, you're wrong.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. I do love cheese, though.
I know.
If you don't like cheese, like, there's something wrong.
I'm lactose intolerant. The cheese doesn't like me.
That's different.
Yeah.
That's not your fault.
Yeah, it's not your
I
fault.
love fresh mozzarella, though. It's my favorite.
Yeah, I love
From
cheese.
Penmac.
But neither here nor there, right?
Anyways.
So,
Anyway.
But yeah, I mean, addictive. There's a lot of people that are miserable because they're stuck in addictive behavior and they do not know that it's addictive behavior, and yet it caused menacing problems in their life, like financial issues from medical bills, and
Sure.
they can't put two and two together.
yeah.
That's the thing too, is like we were talking about, the substance or activity or whatever isn't what I focus on today. Like it's the behaviors behind it, right? Like
Because that's the addiction.
right. Once you realize, like people can say it, but how much are they wholeheartedly like meaning what they say when they're like, you know, it wasn't the drugs, it was a me problem or whatever.
Yeah.
Like people say that, but how much, you know, I look at people's true intentions with things today. Again, back to like what we were talking about with maintenance, like, is your intentions to have a free pass to keep getting fucking high and not deal with your life? Or is your intentions to like get this little
Mhm.
stepping stone to help you on your way?
Right.
I'm fully okay with that, right?
Yeah.
And it's helped a lot of people, but they are pushing it so hard right now.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
it's
there's the
like-
negative side of it, but like we
Those
say all,
two who
like
are
we say all the
constitutionally
time, no, define it, right? Like
True.
define recovery, and like I hate to push like people pushing their agenda, right? Like, do not define your recovery based on me, right? Do not tell me that I need to live my life like you, because I might not like your life. And like, how many people do you see that like I'm like cool, like you got sober, you're doing good, but I don't want to be like you, right? And it's like we have to define what recovery means. And like that's why like I always say this, and I had somebody argue this with me the other day. They're like, well, I better not be able to define it because then that gives me the pass. I'm like, well, then that's what you've defined as your idea. I'm like, my idea of recovery, man, is learning to be okay within myself.
Yeah.
And in order to do so, I have to do internal growth and do these things to constantly grow to become a better person. And like, for me, I cannot use drugs and alcohol and become a better person, because
Yeah.
when I use drugs and alcohol, I don't care about me. I sure in the fuck don't care about you. So take drugs and alcohol away. Now I can learn to be a better person and not be a shitbag.
That's
You know what I
something
mean?
too where I've always, like we were talking about being different from other people earlier. Even in active addiction, not till the end. Like I said, that last 3 years was wild and crazy, right? But before that, like I held down a job. I took care of most of my stuff.
Yeah, you're
to the best of
functioning.
my ability at that point. Excuse me, but I didn't I always had the plan of like, if I could only make this much more money and get this much more drugs and ration it out this far, it'll be payday again. We'll be good. Like I tried to find a way to manage it. It was unmanageable completely, 100%.
Yeah.
And then you build up the tolerance and everything else that goes with it, and you know, come up with the next plan that's completely unmanageable and never going to work. Like that's how my life ended up. But it was one of those details where I was different than everyone else, and I was going to be the one who successfully figured this thing out, and I'll tell you how to do it. And it's just so delusional and irrational to like
It is.
think that that's how I
had that same
pictured
thought.
myself, right?
I think
was
we
like,
all
1%
thought that.
make
Yeah,
it,
oh,
well, I'm
yeah.
gonna be it. I'm gonna be 1% of me.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because we're so special. I'm
Well,
my
that's
own-
what I hate about the percentages. Like I heard that in rehab, they were like, "Well, only 2% are gonna make this," and I'm like, "That's it? Well, it ain't
I'm
fucking me."
I'm gonna
I'm
butcher
out.
this, but there's like it's a quote about statistics, something about it's not necessarily what they show you, but what they cover up. It's
Yeah,
like statistics
absolutely.
are like a bikini.
Well,
Not necessarily what you see, but what is covered
I
up.
can't give you an accurate one.
I don't know what.
That's
the
true. Yeah,
actual
because
quote
like
is, but-
yeah, I just wrote a paper for school where I was talking about solitary confinement, and it was something like the State Department had paid government association blah 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 blah, but the statistics came down to like there was 80 recommendations, only 14 of them were put into partial implementation, 7 to 6 of them were put into full implementation with employees not following the new implementation. But those statistics, just sounding horrible as they are, did not include misconducted paperwork, missing paperwork without signatures. So if you start adding in the fucked up pieces, I mean, it
Right.
just becomes so gargantuous.
Well, even in treatment, like
Yeah.
I tell people all the time, because of like I can't give you an accurate number of how many people are going to make it in rehab, right? Because
Right.
when you leave rehab, you might relapse, you might go back, you might come back, you might go in and out, in and out, in and out, and then boom, eventually get sober. Like there's no way to accurately be able to give an infinitive like this is the real truth. There's no raw
That's
data.
the thing too is like, I hate when I hear people say like, oh, this many people died last year from blank, whatever. Again, like I was in rehab with a guy that was in there 49 times or something like that. Like it was my first time in rehab. Like for him to say that and to like put that into perspective in my own mind, I'm like, man, I got to do this 48 more times for this to work, or what are we talking about here? And there again, that boils down in my, like, for me, I have a son. His mom's still out in active addiction. She's gone through a couple crazy things this past year. And, like, I can't figure out in my head why it worked for me but not for her, you know? Like,
Yeah.
that's one of those things where, what's the answer?
I struggle with that too.
Yeah.
Because
Like, why
I
me?
mean, I wish everyone would get it. I wish everyone would
Sure.
figure it out, right? Like, I think we all.
I
if
mean,
you
we
have
all
real
do.
If you have real recovery, like that's something. There again, I always, if your name gets brought up, like I speak highly of you, and not just to like toot your horn for you or nothing, but like I didn't understand you when we first met. Do you remember? I don't know if you remember that story or not. I won't tell a story on here, but
Yeah, you can. Go ahead. It don't matter.
He was my
Wait.
arch nemesis, so,
so
there,
when
I'm
we
sure.
okay, so when we first met,
I'm
went
usually an
to
asshole in
treatment there,
everybody's
right?
first
You
interaction.
just said something really asshole to me the first time I met you.
It
too,
was, you basically just told the story. No, so he comes out, we were out on a smoke break or whatever, and he comes out and he sits down and he's like, so what do you think about me? And I was like, well, I'm in treatment right now, you're kind of like a counselor and stuff, like, or is this just two guys talking, are we be honest, or what's going on here? He's like, yeah, be honest. I'm like, you're a fucking asshole, man. And like,
Was he being an asshole?
Listen, I had known him for like 3 days.
He's probably being an asshole then.
I had no business giving my interpretation.
I don't know
of
why I
who
was
or how
asking.
he was, right? But like he looked at me and he's like, "All right." It was literally that was the whole conversation. But
Sounds
like
like him.
once I had got to know him better, like I've asked, he's come. We're not best friends or anything, but he's
He's
somebody
not so
I know
bad.
when I call. Like I know if I get a hold of him, he's gonna help me out to
Yeah.
the best of his ability. Like, all the time when I'm talking to the guys over there, like, and if something gets brought up, I'm like, let me just tell you, Like, hey, you imagine your life sitting in these four walls right here and watching people come in and out of here like a fucking revolving door. Like, you have to give yourself a level of detachment from that situation and
Yeah.
not be so emotionally invested, because that's something I learned early on. Like, the one dude I
Yeah.
was in rehab with, within 6 months, he was like at a halfway house or whatever, and like went back out, caught more charges, spent time in jail. Like, he's doing good now. He has like well over a year clean at this point. But it was somebody that I wholeheartedly wanted to get it, like we were talking
Yeah.
about. And like that was a hard lesson learned of like, no matter what I do for somebody else,
Yeah.
they have to do it themselves. They have to want
Yeah,
it.
you're
They
never
have to,
enough.
you know.
I just
I
had
fall in love
I
with
just had
people's
that conversation
potential.
with somebody where it's like, I wish, like, probation was enough. I wish girlfriends, boyfriends, husbands, wives, I wish children. I wish that was enough.
Yeah.
Because if it was, then I wouldn't have to work in this field,
Right.
right? There would be no need for me. And something I've learned throughout the years of working in this field is it's not about, I always tell people, like, I'm going to be an asshole to you. And it's not me being an asshole. It's me being honest with you. And, like, nobody wants to look at the truth. And, like, I'm just going to tell you what I see from my perception. And, like, if it offends you, your feelings aren't real. Right? Because, like, our feelings aren't real. Our feelings are based off of perception. Like, my feelings aren't real. Like, they're valid. They're just not real. It's because of our perception of a situation. So, like, when we're in rehab, like, you know, and one hot button that always pisses people off, and even if you're watching, if this makes you mad, I don't really care. It's your perception. Is I tell people all the time, like, if you've been using drugs and alcohol, don't tell me you're a good parent, because you're not, right? Like, you're not.
That's
Like,
a hard one for me to admit to, too.
it's a hard one for everybody.
Like, I had got, at the end of my run, my son and I lived with my mom and my stepdad.
Mm-hmm.
And like my stepdad passed away in recovery. Like I think it'll be 3 years this November that he hasn't been here. And like that was one of the hardest things is he came at me one day and like
Should be
said,
fine. I should go back to the fine.
where are we even at? I'm so lost.
You were telling us about how your dad
my stepdad,
passed
my stepdad
3 years
yeah.
ago.
Okay, so he's the only person that actually came up to me and asked me like, what can I do to help you? Like, do you need some help? Like everyone else, my own dad, like my biological father, like they were more willing to look away than to actually deal with the problem. I love my mom to death. She's been my rock forever. But I always tell people, like, if I go to speak somewhere or do something like that, like, she was my biggest support, but also my biggest enabler. Like, she would know damn well what the 40 or 50 bucks was for, and I would pay her back. Like I said, I was functioning at one point where, like, I didn't just steal and rob and do those types of things. I know that's some people's story. That's not my story. But rather than seeing me, like, sweating and kicking on the floor and shitting myself and all that, she would rather give me that couple bucks, knowing full well I was going to buy drugs with it. Because, like, I think that's one of the biggest things with dealing with family members in active addiction is, like, you don't want to see them suffer, but you don't know how to help them or what to do for them.
I mean, that's the hardest part.
That's
I
the
think.
biggest part.
I know I when talking with families, that's what the hardest part with all of them is that, you know what I mean, is that struggle.
Right. Because they're again, you know, they want to help, they don't know how to help. And if the person that's actually dealing with the addiction doesn't know how to help themselves or isn't willing to admit that there's a problem there, that's the biggest step in my eyes, is like having the courage to like get out of your own fucking way and realize like maybe this isn't working, maybe this is a problem. Like that's the hardest part. And I don't think people realize how much courage that actually takes to admit that, like to be willing to say like I fucked up. I think a lot of people, not even just in addiction, but life in general, like having the ability to know when you need some help to get through something, like to get that support. Sometimes you don't know where to turn to get it.
Yeah, no, I
There's
agree with that.
so many different parts of that
Yeah.
that people don't realize. I think that's why we get criminalized the way we do.
Mhm.
Like, you keep fucking up, they don't know what to do with you. You get thrown in a cage.
Yeah.
You know, like, as sad as that is, I think that's a lot of why it gets dealt with the way it does, because no one really has the answers.
Right.
Like, for
Nah.
someone to come and talk to you and be like, what do I do for my family member? It's different for everybody, man.
I always tell family, well, chances are you're probably killing them, because enabling is killing, right? And like that's the big thing that we have to step back from. Me and my mom, man, we probably just want to fight each other, right? I love my mom to death, but there was a time where I hated her, right? And I'm sure she hated me. The one thing I can always say about my mom, no matter what, is she's always made sure I was in a position to figure out how to do shit, right? She never enabled shit. She'd be like, well, you need $20 for gas? You should figure out how to get $20 for gas. I'd be like, but like I need gas now. And she'd be like, well, the yard needs mowed too. You know what I mean?
Right.
And she never enabled anything for me at all. And in talking with her, she would tell me like there's things I wish I would have done different, but one of them is no matter what, I made sure you were prepared enough for life that you don't need to rely on anybody. And that was her way of trying not to enable me. You know what I mean?
That's the thing too, is
weird.
where, like, so just recently in the last probably month, I've actually reached out to my dad. He lives in Florida now, and we've talked on the phone here and there. I'm terrible at calling people still, like I'm bad at calling people, but we've actually talked on the phone a couple times, and for it had been almost 5 years that I hadn't talked to him. And I had this big made-up resentment in my head that was like, it was a me problem.
Yeah.
Like, I don't blame him for not wanting to deal with my ass while I'm trying to stay fucked up and have a
Sure.
relationship. Like, that's not his fault.
Sure.
You get to the end of the road where you gotta let somebody just hit that rock bottom and like stop. Just stop. And that's a
got
hard
to.
thing to do too. Like, I've been dealing with my cousin. She's in active addiction. And finally I said, the only time you call me is when, like, you want a hamburger or a ride or whatever. Like, you're not listening to anything
Yeah.
I've told you. You're not taking any type of suggestions, or like, I'm not an expert, but I've dealt with some of the same things. And if you're like actively doing the opposite of what we're talking about, then why? Like, why? I'm not in a position to put my own mental health and my own sanity at risk
Literally.
to help someone that's not willing to, like,
It's
at
going to
least
cause that
listen.
resentment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
And it's not easy there again. I don't want
Yeah.
anything bad to happen to her, but like, I'm also not willing to put my own child, myself,
and
Right.
that's the
life
big
that I
thing.
built.
Yeah.
And that's the big thing that you say, and the most important. I want people to understand. I have a cousin. Same thing, man. She went out there, and I miss her dearly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I would love to, nothing more than to talk with her, like, on a daily basis and rebuild that relationship and hang out and all that shit. But, she went through she was in addiction, and like, I had to step back and be like, I can't risk my own life for your bullshit.
Right.
Let me know when you get right. And I haven't talked to her in years. So
I basically told her, I said,
she probably hates
I
me.
said, when you want help and you're ready for that, cool, because you know how it goes. I get all the excuses and you're trying to control my life and manipulate me, and no, I'm really not.
All this shit you said.
All this shit- oh, yeah,
Literally.
for sure, definitely. Like, that's
Totally
all the
said
shit
it.
I was saying
Yeah.
too, right?
Yeah.
So like, that's where the whole, again, it's like nomenclature, but like one addict helping another, right?
Absolutely.
Unless you've been there, it's like with anything. Like, I'm not gonna go out and speak on, like, I don't know, women's health rights or something. I'm not a woman. I don't feel qualified to talk about that.
We appreciate that
But like,
answer.
you know what I mean? If I talk about like using too many drugs and being a dumbass and going to jail and stuff, like, I have experience in that. I'm not saying that gives me a right or anything to talk on it. It doesn't make me an expert by any means. I'm not an expert at anything.
Mhm.
I'm like jack of all trades, master of none. I always say that, but
So is no
I at
fault.
least can understand better.
I have a roofer's
people.
card.
You have a roofer's card?
It covers everything. You're welcome.
Well played.
Thank you.
On that note, right? So on that note, man, if you guys are still with us, paying attention, sorry about the technical difficulties. Our camera shut off. So for the first time ever, you're gonna see where I piece it together. I hate doing editing on these things.
It's so funny because
I feel like that.
Before we started, I told her, I was like, man, he's gonna have to get past that at some point. Here
No.
we are.
No.
You spoke it into
So-
existence. That's what it was.
I'm never gonna get past that because here's the thing. Like we're never gonna I'm never gonna edit that thing because I don't want to take away from the authenticity, and I don't ever want to when you're watching us, like we're a brand, right? Emotional Nightmares is a brand, and at the end of the day, we should be the brand you can trust, and like we're a brand that.
I think that's trademarked. I think that's a trademark term. The
No.
brand you can trust. I'm
Well,
pretty sure
yeah,
they're gonna.
no, they're not
You
gonna.
can't
somebody
trust
for
that
that.
brand. That's
Can't
not
trust
Emotional
whoever
Nightmares.
that-
So
Who's that?
we are, but we're like a brand. Like our brand is we're real, raw, and uncut. So like, you know what I mean? If I'm sitting here right now and I drop coffee on myself, we're just gonna go and we're just gonna continue on like that because I don't want to take away from the authenticity. And since we don't write any of this, right? Since we just kind of say, what do you want to talk about? Let's go, right? If we do editing, right, it's going to take away from that, right? That's why, like, we have one episode where it's really good, but it's only an audio, right? Because the video fucked up. So
It was a good one.
I can't release it because there's no video for it. I mean, we probably will. We'll still release it just over on Spotify instead of YouTube. But the reason for that, though, is like that I don't is where I'm like, now we could re-record it, right? But it's not going to be the same.
I
Like
won't do that either.
we won't re-record.
like that.
No, we will never re-record anything. Like if we fuck up, we fuck up. Because at the end of the day, you cannot recreate the conversations that we're having because it'll lose its authenticity. You know
I
what
don't
mean?
even really remember the conversations that we have.
I
Usually
forget
directly
everything.
afterwards.
I forget what we talked about with our first guest that we
Literally.
did this morning.
I honestly, there again, I mean, I don't know what we were talking about before we even started the camera.
Yeah, I don't either.
You know what I mean?
Perfect.
It's
I
one of
don't
those
either.
things where I
Welcome.
think if you're pushing like that authenticity, that's something super helpful for people because everything's so Hollywood anymore.
Yeah, no, we're not.
You know,
We're ghetto as
teleprompter,
fuck over here.
scripted, just bullshit. And I think if you're
Yeah.
able to sit here and just have a conversation and like share it with people, I think that's way more helpful than
Yeah.
us sitting here spouting off statistics or details or fucking
Yeah.
shit we read.
Yeah,
on
we ain't
Google.
doing that. We're far
We
from.
ain't doing that.
We're ghetto as fuck. I got
I will
I got
go
the
on
cords.
those
I got the cords duct taped to the floor.
He really does.
Like we're ghetto as shit over here. But it is what it is, right? So yeah, listen, I appreciate you for coming out and talking with us. I appreciate the people listening. I hope you're still with us at this point. Like, share, and subscribe, and do it again, and keep doing it. Tell your friends that know people to sponsor because we need sponsorship. I'm gonna keep saying that because we're gonna speak that into existence.
We should just have Dave
I was just
speak it
saying,
into
maybe I'm supposed to
existence.
But you could have been anywhere in the world today. For some reason, on this wonderful moment, you have decided to sit here and listen to about an hour long of us. So I appreciate you for listening to us ramble. I hope that you got something. I hope it helped you in some way, shape, or form. If you feel like using today, please pick up the phone and call somebody. If you feel that your mental health just isn't okay, please pick up the phone and call somebody.
Crisis links are in our
They're in our
link
disclaimer.
tree and our disclaimer.
They're in our disclaimers.
Please go to your own therapy. We are not your therapists.
Correct. Or, you know what? We're accessible, though, too. Like, if you want to talk to one of us, hit us up. We're pretty accessible. I might not get back to you immediately.
He
But
won't get back to you immediately. but
I
he
have
will
like
get
a
back to you.
10
Yeah.
to 20 business day get back time.
Yeah, I will get back to you. It might not be right away, but it will be back to you.
I'm the worst.
But
Get
we
her back.
Get
appreciate you.
her back.
What you got? You want to say your
I'll
thing?
keep happy hour happy.
Happy hour, happy. Hey, we got some cool shit coming up. We're gonna be in some locations, doing some things. We got the overdose awareness that we're gonna go to. We're gonna go to the recovery in the park. These are in Venango County. We're gonna go to that recovery walk in Pittsburgh. We got something else coming out that we're gonna go do.
Don't know.
Yeah,
Who knows?
check our
Goes just
Facebook.
along for the ride.
Yeah,
Yeah.
check our Facebook because we post shit on there
I just kind of
about these events. We're gonna go to these events. I hope to see you guys there. So, Dave, we appreciate you. You got
Appreciate you
any
having me.
final thoughts?
I think we're good, man. We had our technical difficulties. We covered all kinds of.
All right, man. We're good.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching.